Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Truth That Heals podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez, and today our special guest is podcaster Burcu. Burcu has her own podcast called the Coffee O'Clock Podcast, which is amazing. So go check it out. And in this episode, we're going to be diving into some of the challenges that she has experienced and how life has led her to where she is today and how she started her awesome podcast, the Coffee O'Clock Podcast. Now, before we begin, go ahead and press that subscribe button, like, and share. And also, if you would like to support this channel, go check out the show notes. I have a link, Buy Me a Coffee, where you can help this channel, The Truth That Heals, continue to grow. Enjoy the episode. And today I'm here with special guest Burcu from the Coffee O'Clock Podcast. Burcu, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Can you introduce yourself to the audience and share a little bit about what you are currently doing?
Sure. Ryan, it was good to be here. It is good to be here. So I am the host of the Coffee O'Clock podcast, like you mentioned, and I just had you guest there. So it's a secret to your audience. I am the owner of Joy LLC that is based in California, United States, but I am living in Europe, in Hungary. Currently, I am a consultant for coaches, speakers, and entrepreneurs to create their authentic branding. And I'm also certified professional life coach. I help individuals to unlock their authenticity and to live a fulfilling life.
Thank you for sharing that. And yes, I've checked out your podcast, and you're also on Instagram. You're all over, and you have so many amazing guests, and you give so much great advice. But I'm curious to know, what was life like for you before you started the podcast?
It was in 2020. I used to live in California from 2016 to 2020. So what happened in 2020. So I was very sick and I was probably COVID, but nobody knew. So I lost my voice. I was hardly breathing and hardly making a life in the US, not able to visit my parents. I am originally from Turkey, so not able to fly, not able to do anything. So I was very in a hard situation. I wanted to stay in the US and keep my business alive and everything. But of course, everybody had such a difficult time and I had to move back to Turkey. I had to choose that path because I missed my parents and nobody knew what was going to happen. So enough of that story. So I went back to Turkey and I relocated myself, still continued doing my business across the world. My business stays in the US and I am here traveling and doing my work. And I wanted to connect with people and I loved coffee. I loved meeting people for coffee. And I was like, what's going to happen? Like, I remember I was in the room before I moved back to Turkey. I was in my room alone, not allowed to go to the coffee shop. There was nowhere open. And of course, you are distancing yourself from people. And I just had my phone and my cup of coffee. And I said, let me do it live. So I started doing a live by myself, just sharing inspiration, both inspiring myself and people who are watching me live. Everybody was with their phone at that time and everybody started doing lives. So that's what I did. And I started having guests. And then at the end of 2020, I had already so many guests, so many episodes, but live show. And I thought, why not turning this weird year called 2020 into something that I can remember in a good way. So in December 2020, I turned my show, IG Live show, into a podcast and I started doing all the things, intro, outro, finding a platform to launch it and editing and learning all those things and having it a more professional platform where I have people purposely doing purposeful shows and episodes. So since that, I have been doing every week. So that's the story behind podcast. It was only motivating me and then motivating others. So it was just like a snowball effect. And I'm just happy that I have it almost 5 years now.
How do you prepare to be a podcaster when it's not even your first language?
Well, thank you for that question. Definitely not easy. It wasn't easy at the beginning. Still, it's challenging sometimes because it will be always my second language and I might have mistakes because I'm a human. And even native speakers make mistakes. I make mistake in my own language. So it's just so funny how our mind works. And at the beginning, I learned English in 2016. So when I moved to the United States from Turkey, I didn't speak English. So I learned English. And then, of course, at the beginning, when I was doing my show, I had this script in front of me. I knew exactly what questions I was going to ask. And then I continued doing my personal growth, my trainings, education, everything that I could do for myself to improve my English and make it as fluent as I can. And I still have everything English, even though I don't live in a country where you find people who are native English speakers. So it takes a lot of effort to build that kind of muscle in your mind. But because I am living my life in English from my phone settings to my daily notes on my agenda, everything is English. So every time I train my mind to think English, and when I think English and continue doing my trainings and educating my clients, doing coaching, I do everything in English. So everything that I do helps me to keep it strong and improve.
Well, that's very inspiring because I feel that, uh, at least for me as a podcaster, there were so many fears of, am I going to say this the wrong way, or am I going to am I going to sound nervous? I mean, there's so many fears that I had starting off the podcast. Um, what were some habits that you started early on in your podcasting career that you can say helped build your podcast to what it is today?
Definitely, I listened different podcasts from famous people in the world, and I did a long research on my intro and outro, what to say, how to grab people's attention and finding a music around it. It was a long process of me waking up with it, sleeping with it. So when I finally got it, I was like, okay, this is it. And what I do still, like since that time and now, what I do is to connect and find out what others do and read and invest in myself. I am somebody who is obsessed with self-improvement. I'm also an NLP master practitioner where you understand how your mind works, and being a professional coach also helps me to connect with like-minded people and also working on myself to be better and best every single day. So those are the habits that I do for everything as a business owner, for a wife, for a daughter, for a person, becoming a better person every single day. Those are the things help me to be who I am today.
I think what you just said is something excellent. That you still work on yourself and you're still building, because it's not like, oh, I did the work in the past, that's it, I'm done. You're still, even though you are a life coach, I still sense this drive to excel and to improve and to keep growing. So we already touched on the start of your podcast, some of the challenges, and how you started making these good habits, work habits. Now I want to shift to vision. When was it that you got the vision of the format for your podcast, and how did you get the name?
Well, I didn't have a vision, first of all. There is something happened, which is crazy when I think about it. And nobody asked me this question. So thank you so much for that. Um, the Coffee O'Clock was my blog name, first of all. Coffee O'Clock was the name of my blog because Coffee O'Clock means to me, mostly in Turkish culture, I think it's universal too, because I work with so many people from all around the world, and I find it's a universal thing for people. When we say, let's grab a cup of coffee, what we truly mean is the truth behind it is that I need to connect with you. I need to talk to you. I have something that I want to share with you. And oftentimes, it is the time where you want to get inspired. You need some ideas, or you need to just unleash some stuff and feel better. So when I say, my friends, let's have a coffee, and when they say, let's grab a cup of coffee, I am like, okay, this means we need something. And that's how I found the name when I created my blog. And when I was doing the live, I thought, I love coffee, and I'm doing this when I have the time to share the insight and inspiration with people. And when I do it with my guests, it's the same. So why not calling it a Coffee O'Clock? So that's how I found the name. And the vision developed itself because, like I mentioned, I had this live show by myself first on Instagram, and then I received people who wanted to go live with me, and I'm like, okay, why not having people on it? So we started doing this guest live show, and then I thought, maybe I can turn this into a more purposeful thing. Like I mentioned, this could be the show where people both have joy and also inspiration. That's why whenever I have my guests, I make sure that they have overcome something and they have the positivity, the drive that they can evolve my people's life, my audience life, personally and professionally. So that's how it became. And I will think about this more because in the future, as it's becoming a 5-year-old baby for me, I want to see what I see it for the next 5 years or for the future, how I want to evolve it. So that gave me a good idea to think from now on.
Mhm. And I find it very interesting going back because when you started this, you were mentioning it was in a coffee shop, I believe.
No,
You
at all.
okay, I thought you were at a coffee shop and or that was the live, right?
As live.
That was the live. But when you started doing that, it was in the middle of the pandemic, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a time where people were not connecting, people were not interacting. And I've been discussing recently with a few friends here, and something that I lost during especially 2020 was getting a cup of coffee at my favorite coffee shops and
Mm-hmm.
meeting with different friends and having that interaction. And I don't know about with you, but for me, every time I sit down with a friend and they can be the one talking the whole time, I can be listening, but just
Mm-hmm.
being there, I feel a sense of peace and joy. And then I also get a sense of that when I hear podcasts. And yours is a great example. It's like I'm not in the conversation, I'm just listening, but I feel that I'm interacting. So, again, thank you for the work that you do over at Coffee O'Clock Podcast.
Thank you. It's very nice to hear.
And something that I want to focus on now is something that is key to your podcast, and that is to unlock your authentic side. What are some tips that you can give to the audience who may be struggling with unlocking the authentic side? Can you share any of them?
Yes. And let me tell you first, it's not going to be easy. It's a very hard process.
Okay.
And I am somebody who got against to all the social norms in Turkey, and most of them are universal norms where we all, mostly women, receive from the society, like you have to have a good degree, then you have to get married, then you have to have a child, never ending happy life frame. So when I was at my corporate job, I had a corporate job before. I was a human resources specialist in an international company, which was a great life for so many people. I had my family, I had a car, I had friends, I had this decent job. But in 3 years, I was not happy because I was not expressing myself in a way that was authentic for me, in a way that was true for me. I always hit one wall to another, one society rule to another corporate rule. And I was just so stuck and lost in my life. Like your story, you got lost, and I was lost in my life. Even though I had so many things that many people can dream about, I was not happy. So I started searching how I can be happy and how people can be happy. So I started researching on this human mind, like what we need to do, why we do what we do. So that's how I met neurolinguistic programming, NLP, and professional life coaching, and then energy work, spiritual work. That's how I found my authenticity. So it is getting deeper within your soul, who you truly are. If you're a black sheep, colorful sheep, that's okay. You have to own who you are. And I was probably a very colorful sheep in my culture, in my city, in my country. That's why I needed to leave that environment to find who I truly was. And that's how I landed to Los Angeles. And that's how I started my story from scratch without knowing the language, without knowing anyone, without having a job. I left everything to find out who I was and how I can help people to do the same without leaving their life, because I left my 25-year life back and had something very hard to start with. I was not a Miss Burcu, like somebody people respect in a corporate world. I was somebody doing whatever job, learning English and just starting from scratch. So if you really want to find your authenticity and unlock it, have a cup of coffee, sit with yourself, and have nothing around you. This is also named coffee o'clock, the coffee o'clock exercise, which is a deep exercise, meditative exercise that I do with my clients. But I will give you a short overview of, so that your people who are listening to us or watching us right now can do it. It can take 5 minutes to 10 minutes. You can do longer. Don't have any devices with you. No phone, no laptop, nothing, even no watch. Nothing can distract you but yourself, your cup of coffee or tea, something warm, because warm drink has a scientific fact. When you drink it, it just gives you more comfort, more safe place, and just listen to yourself. You can close your eyes, take deep breaths, and then visualize yourself where you feel the most joyful and happy, comfortable you, without thinking what others think about you. Just being you. Just visualize yourself and have a scan in your body, like what you feel at that moment. And when you do this every time, every day, every morning, or whenever you have the time to sit with yourself in still, it will help you to unlock what's inside of you, what's true for you, what is authentic for you. So that's a short brief of the exercise. But if you want to learn more, I'm happy to teach you more.
What would you say is your truth, your ultimate truth that is healing?
You have one life and one business. Make sure it belongs to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And where can the audience find your work?
On Apple Podcasts, YouTube, my podcast, The Coffee O'Clock. I am also an Instagram fan, so it is JOYYBURCU on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and my website is burjuwithjoy@kajabi.com. So I will share all the links with Ryan and he can post it so you can find me easily. I would be happy to connect.
Thank you so much, Burcu. And to the audience, I'll be leaving links so you can subscribe to Burcu's YouTube, check out her website, and go support her there. Everyone listening, thank you very much. And thank you for listening to the Truth That Heals podcast.